What if I told you that the most dangerous enemy you will ever face is not standing across a battlefield, not hiding in shadows and not wearing armor, but instead whispering inside your own mind? What if I told you that the doubts you carry, the fears you hide, and the laziness you allow are the chains that hold you down more than any prison ever could? You may laugh, you may resist the thought, but the truth is that life crowns those who conquer themselves before they ever conquer the world. This is the story of Prince Imad, a man who was born to rule but who first had to learn to master his weakness before destiny would ever allow him to hold the throne. Prince Imad lived in a kingdom that worshipped the memory of his late father, a ruler so disciplined and wise that his very name was spoken as a legend. But legends cast long shadows, and within that shadow, the young prince felt small. The people looked at him with eyes of doubt, servants whispered that he was untested, and nobles questioned if he could ever rise to the weight of his father's crown. At night, in the silence of his chamber, Imad confessed to himself, "Perhaps they are right. Perhaps the blood of a king flows in my veins, but the heart of one does not. I feel the crown before it even touches my head, and already it crushes me." One evening, wandering in the gardens beneath a silver moon, he encountered an old counselor who had guided his father through wars and famines. The man studied his troubled face and said, "You wear despair as though it were your crown. Tell me, why does the son of a lion believe himself to be a lamb?" Imad sighed and answered, "Because every time I try to rise, I stumble. Every time I try to act, I fail. Each mistake feels like proof that I am unworthy." The counselor leaned closer, his voice heavy and deliberate, and declared, "Do you not see? Failure is not the verdict, it is the forge. A sword is not born sharp, it is beaten, bent, and broken 1,000 times before it becomes worthy of battle. You, my prince, are not failing. You are being shaped." Imad shook his head in bitterness and muttered, "And what if I break before I am shaped? What if the hammer destroys me before I am strong?" To this, the counselor replied, "Then you were never meant to rule, but if you endure, if you welcome the fire, you will be unbreakable." That night, Imad lay awake with those words twisting inside him like fire. Before dawn, he disguised himself as a commoner and left the palace to walk among his people. He saw farmers laboring before the sun had risen, their backs bent, their hands raw, yet their spirits alive. He watched a blacksmith striking iron until his arms shook with exhaustion, failing to shape the blade again and again until finally it took form. Imad approached him and asked why he did not give up, and the man replied with laughter that burned like truth. "Because every strike, even the wrong ones, brings me closer to the blade I need." The words echoed inside him with thunder, every strike, even the wrong ones. But destiny wastes no time in testing those who are awakening. Days later, news reached the palace that a rival kingdom had crossed the borders with a vast army. The council erupted in fear, with some ministers crying that land must be surrendered for peace, and others demanding reckless war. Imad sat in silence, fear clawing at his chest, his father's shadow pressing down on him like a mountain. Alone that night, walking again beneath the stars, he whispered, "Father, if you were here, tell me what to do. If I fight and lose, I doom my people. If I surrender, I prove the whispers true, that I am a coward." Though no voice answered from the heavens, he felt the echo of the counselor's words. A sword is not born sharp, it is beaten, bent, and broken. He clenched his fists and muttered to himself, "Then beat me, bend me, break me, but I will not surrender." The next morning he stood before his generals, his voice steady with a power they had never heard before. He said, "We may be outnumbered, but numbers alone do not decide fate. Discipline, unity, and courage will be our weapons. Fear is our true enemy, not their blades. If you stand with me, we will show them that a kingdom's strength is not counted in soldiers, but in spirit." His words poured into their hearts like fire. Men who had trembled with doubt now stood tall, willing to follow him into the jaws of death. The battle was brutal. The enemy crashed against them like waves against stone, and many times it seemed the line would break. Yet Imad rode among his men, not hidden in towers but fighting in the mud, his voice ringing louder than the clash of steel as he shouted, Hold the line! Every strike brings us closer to victory. When defeat seemed inevitable, he remembered the blacksmith's laughter and told himself, even wrong strikes shape the blade. Slowly, through persistence and discipline, the tide turned. The enemy, stunned by the resilience of a kingdom they thought weak, retreated in shame. The people erupted in joy, but Imad did not raise his head in arrogance. Alone that night in the throne room, staring at the empty seat of his father, he whispered, "Now I understand. The true crown is not of gold, it is of discipline, and the throne is not given by blood, it is earned by fire." But his trials were far from over. Betrayals arose within his own court, famine stalked his people, and the endless weight of decisions pressed against his shoulders. Some nights he fell into despair again, whispering to himself, "Perhaps I am not enough." But each time he remembered the counselor's words, "A sword is not born sharp," and the blacksmith's laughter, "Every strike brings me closer." So he rose earlier, worked harder, endured longer. When famine struck, he ate the same bread as his people. When conspiracies formed, he met them not with rage, but with patience. And when fear returned, he answered it with action. Over time, his kingdom flourished, not just in wealth, but in character. His people admired him not because he was flawless, but because he was human, because he had once doubted and had chosen to rise anyway. Children grew up hearing the story of a prince who conquered not only his enemies, but himself. And in the royal gardens, a great tree stood tall, planted by Imad in his youth, watered through years of persistence. Its roots were deep, its trunk unshaken by storms, and it became the symbol of his reign. Proof that what begins as a seed of weakness can grow into a monument of strength if cared for with discipline. So what if I told you that you too are like Prince Imad? That the voices of doubt in your mind are not proof you are weak, but proof that you are being tested? What if I told you that your failures are not chains, but hammers shaping you into the weapon you must become? Too many give up before the blade is forged. Too many let the whispers of fear decide their fate. But if you endure the fire, if you welcome the strikes, if you persist even when it feels pointless, then one day you will rise as unshaken as that tree, wearing not a crown of gold, but a crown of discipline. The question is not whether you can. It is whether you will keep striking long enough to see the blade take shape.